At 03:47, on the morning of May 6, 1943, Commander Peter Gretton watched from St. John's, Newfoundland, as reports came in from his convoy. HMS Duncan sat at the pier with nearly empty fuel tanks. Gretton had been forced to detach 3 days earlier, leaving command of Escort Group B-7 to Lieutenant Commander Robert Sherwood aboard HMS Tay. Now the radio brought news. 6 U-boats destroyed in the last 6 hours. 13 merchant ships lost over 7 days. But for the first time in the war, a major convoy battle had cost the attackers more than the defenders. Gretton did not yet know he had commanded the first battle of what would become Black May, the month when 41 German submarines would die, when 3 technologies deployed simultaneously would reverse the Battle of the Atlantic forever. In March 1943, Germany came closer to winning the Atlantic War than at any point since 1939. Admiral Karl Dönitz commanded 240 operational U-boats, the largest submarine force ever assembled. He positioned them in multiple patrol lines across the North Atlantic shipping lanes. Group Raubgraf with 10 boats, Group Stürmer with 18 boats, Group Dränger with 11 boats, all waiting for the convoys that had to pass through. In mid-March, 43 U-boats attacked convoys HX-229 and SC-122 simultaneously. 21 merchant ships sunk in 3 days. 1 U-boat lost. 21-to-1 exchange ratio in Germany's favour. The month's total was devastating. 120 ships sunk worldwide, 82 in the Atlantic, 476,000 tons of cargo, fuel, and equipment sent to the bottom, food to feed Britain, oil to power the war effort, ammunition for the armies, all lost. Britain faced genuine collapse. Fuel reserves dropped to critically low levels, food stocks dwindled. The War Cabinet discussed rationing beyond anything yet imposed. The Admiralty debated abandoning the convoy system entirely because Wolfpack tactics overwhelmed the escorts. The Royal Navy's official historian Stephen Roskill later concluded the Germans never came so near to disrupting communications between the New World and the Old as in the first 20 days of March 1943. In April, the pressure continued relentlessly. 64 ships lost worldwide, 39 in the Atlantic, 235,000 tons. U-515 attacked convoy TS-37 on April 30th. 7 tankers destroyed. 4 sank in the first 3 minutes. 3 more over the next 6 hours. Critical fuel supplies lost. But 3 separate technologies were converging, each developed independently over the previous year, each deployed across the Atlantic theatre in March and April 1943. Individually, they provided advantages. Combined and deployed simultaneously, they created strategic transformation. The first technology was centimetric radar. Since 1941, RAF Coastal Command hunted U-boats using ASV Mark II radar. The system could detect surfaced submarines at approximately 12 miles. It worked, but it had a fundamental vulnerability. ASV Mark II operated at 1.5-meter wavelength, long-wave transmission. The Germans developed a receiver designated METOX that detected these emissions from 30 miles away. U-boat lookouts heard the METOX warning beep long before aircraft arrived. They crash-dived with time to spare. Submarines reached 60 feet depth in 35 seconds. By the time the aircraft arrived overhead, the ocean was empty. By September 1942, the statistics proved METOX had neutered ASV Mark II. Aircraft with radar were flying 135 hours between U-boat sightings. Aircraft without radar were also flying 125 hours between sightings. The radar provided 0 operational advantage. The breakthrough came from fundamental physics research at the University of Birmingham. In February 1940, physicists John Randall and Harry Boot developed the cavity magnetron, a vacuum tube device that generated powerful microwave frequency electromagnetic radiation, operating at 10 centimeter wavelength instead of 1.5 meters. The implications were revolutionary. 10 centimeter radar could be made small enough to fit in aircraft while maintaining detection ranges of 12 to 15 miles. Most critically, the Germans possessed no receiver technology capable of detecting 10 centimeter transmissions. The wavelength was outside the range of any German radar detector. The new system was designated ASV Mark III. Development and testing consumed 2 years. Prototype units arrived at RAF Coastal Command Development Unit in December 1942. Testing began January 1943. Engineers worked through technical problems with the displays, the antenna mounting, the power supply. The first operational patrol using ASV Mark III flew on the night of March 1, 1943. 2 Wellington bombers equipped with the new radar flew over the Bay of Biscay. They returned without sighting submarines. Similar patrols over the following 2 weeks produced no contacts. The technology worked perfectly. The submarines just happened to be elsewhere. Then results began accumulating. By late March, production had increased enough to equip entire squadrons. No. 172 Squadron at RAF Chivanor converted all their Wellington bombers to ASV Mark III. No. 120 Squadron received the new radar for their very long-range Liberators. No. 407 Squadron equipped their aircraft. By April, 75 long-range aircraft patrolled the Bay of Biscay and North Atlantic convoy routes equipped with radar the Germans could not detect. The impact materialized immediately. U-boat commanders began reporting impossible attacks, aircraft appearing without any METOX warning, submarines caught fully surfaced with crew on deck, boats attacked during crash dives. The confident assumption that night operations were safe evaporated. Every surfacing became potentially fatal. German naval intelligence analyzed reports, desperately seeking explanations. They examined wreckage from shot-down British aircraft. No obvious new equipment. Some U-boat radio operators reported detecting strange signals outside the normal frequency ranges, but headquarters dismissed these reports as instrumentation errors or atmospheric phenomena. The mystery persisted through summer 1943. U-boats continued dying to attacks with no advance warning. Losses mounted. On August 13, 1943, German Naval High Command made a catastrophic decision based on misinformation. A captured RAF Coastal Command pilot told interrogators during questioning that the British had developed a receiver that could detect METOX emissions from 90 miles away. The story was completely fabricated. The pilot invented the explanation to protect the real secret of centimetric radar, but German engineers tested the theory in laboratories and determined it was technically possible for METOX receivers to emit detectable radiation. Based on this false intelligence, headquarters ordered all U-boats to turn off their METOX receivers immediately. The submarines lost their only warning system. They died even faster. The misinformation remained accepted as fact for the rest of the war. The second technology deployed simultaneously was high-frequency direction finding, HFDF. The British sailors called it Huff-Duff. The principle was straightforward. Every time a U-boat transmitted a high-frequency radio message, HFDF equipment could detect the transmission and calculate the bearing to the source. Detection range approximately 50 miles under favorable atmospheric conditions. If 2 ships detected the same transmission, they could triangulate the exact position of the transmitting submarine. 50 miles detection range was revolutionary. Surface search radar could detect submarines at approximately 8 miles maximum. ASDIC sonar detected submerged submarines at perhaps 2,000 yards. HFDF provided 5 to 10 times greater range than any other sensor. This meant escorts could detect U-boats approaching the convoy long before the submarines reached attack positions. For the first time in the war, escorts could conduct offensive operations instead of merely reacting to attacks. They could hunt proactively. The technology had existed in various forms since the 1920s. Large shore-based direction-finding stations tracked radio transmissions across hundreds of miles. But equipment for ships required miniaturization that took years to develop. The antenna, receiver, and cathode ray display had to fit in the cramped spaces of escort vessels while maintaining accuracy and reliability in Atlantic weather. Research teams across Britain and the United States worked on compact HFDF systems through 1941 and 1942. Production began in late 1942. Priority went to larger warships first. Only in early 1943 did sufficient sets become available to equip convoy escorts. Commander Donald McIntyre had fought U-boats since September 1939, one of the Royal Navy's most experienced and successful anti-submarine warfare officers. In March 1941, commanding HMS Walker, his group achieved one of the war's greatest successes. They sank German submarines U-99 and U-100. U-99 was commanded by Kapitänleutnant Otto Kretschmer, the highest-scoring U-boat ace of the war, with 47 merchant ships totaling over 270,000 tons sunk. Kretschmer was captured and imprisoned. It was one of the most significant captures of the Battle of the Atlantic. By 1943, McIntyre commanded HMS Hesperus, a destroyer serving as senior escort for North Atlantic convoys. In April 1943, Hesperus received HFDF equipment, a rotating antenna mounted on the foremast, receiver and display in the operations room, operators trained to identify transmissions and calculate bearings. The tactical advantage HFDF provided was revolutionary. McIntyre could now detect U-boat radio transmissions at approximately 50 miles, far beyond the range of radar or ASDIC. When a U-boat transmitted a position report or contact signal, HFDF provided the bearing. McIntyre could detach from the convoy and run down the bearing at high speed, attacking submarines before they reached attack positions. This proactive hunting tactic proved devastatingly effective. Between April and October 1943, Hesperus sank multiple U-boats using HFDF-directed attacks. McIntyre would detect a transmission, calculate the bearing, close at maximum speed, and attack while the submarine remained on the surface, unaware of the approaching threat. Other experienced escort commanders learned and adopted the technique. HFDF equipment spread across the convoy escort fleet through spring and summer 1943. By May, many convoys included multiple escorts equipped with direction finding. This created an impossible dilemma for U-boat operations. Admiral Dönitz's Wolfpack tactics fundamentally required constant radio communication. U-boats transmitted when they sighted a convoy. They transmitted position reports every 4 to 6 hours. They transmitted to coordinate with other boats for massed night surface attacks. Every single transmission gave away their position to any escort within 50 miles equipped with HFDF. The submarines needed to communicate, to execute coordinated Wolfpack attacks. But communication meant the escorts knew exactly where they were and could hunt them down. The third technology was the ley-light searchlight used in combination with ASV Mark III radar. Squadron leader Humphrey de Verde of RAF Coastal Command developed the concept in 1940. A powerful searchlight mounted in the belly of a Wellington bomber, 24 inches in diameter, 22 million candle power intensity, powered by batteries or a generator, controllable from the cockpit. The tactical concept was elegant. Aircraft approached using radar. The submarine could not see or hear the aircraft. At approximately 1 mile range, the pilot turned on the searchlight. 22 million candle power illuminated the ocean surface like midday sun. The submarine crew was instantly flash-blinded, unable to see the aircraft, unable to man anti-aircraft guns effectively, unable to crash dive before depth charges arrived. The typical crash dive took 35 seconds. Depth charges fell in 10 seconds. The ley light had been operationally deployed since mid-1942, but combined with ASV Mark II radar, it achieved limited results. Matox warned the submarines. They dived before the searchlight activated. With ASV Mark III centimetric radar, the entire tactical equation transformed. Wellington bombers detected surfaced submarines at 15 miles with radar the Germans could not detect. The aircraft closed to 1 mile in complete darkness and silence. Then the searchlight blazed. The submarine was trapped on the surface with no warning, no time to dive, no ability to shoot back effectively while flash-blinded. Night operations over the Atlantic and the Bay of Biscay became slaughter for U-boats through spring and summer 1943. Submarines surfaced to charge batteries using diesel engines. Aircraft detected them at 15 miles, closed in darkness, turned on lights at 1 mile, dropped depth charges. The submarine either died immediately or suffered catastrophic damage, forcing return to base where Allied agents often reported its arrival. U-boat commanders began reporting to headquarters that surfacing at night had become suicide. The aircraft could see them, but they could not see the aircraft until the searchlight blazed and death arrived seconds later. Some boats tried new tactics, remaining on the surface and manning all anti-aircraft guns. Fighting back, a few aircraft were shot down. Approximately 8 Coastal Command aircraft lost to U-boat gunfire in May and June 1943, but the exchange rate overwhelmingly favored the British. 3 or 4 U-boats died for every aircraft lost. Admiral Dönitz issued new standing orders. Surface only for minimal time. 20 minutes maximum to charge batteries, then dive immediately. 20 minutes was still enough. The aircraft found them anyway. 3 technologies deployed simultaneously across the Atlantic theatre in spring 1943. ASV Mark 3 centimetric radar that submarines could not detect. HFDF that pinpointed the location of every radio transmission. Ley lights that turned darkness into deadly illumination. Individually, each provided tactical advantage. Combined in simultaneous deployment, they created strategic transformation. The convergence materialized in May 1943. Convoy ONS-5 departed Liverpool on April 21st with 43 merchant ships. Slow convoy, ships making 7 knots maximum speed, carrying ballast westbound or light export cargo, heading for Halifax and North American ports. Commander Peter Gretton's escort group B-7 provided close protection. Destroyer HMS Duncan commanded by Gretton, destroyer HMS Vidette, frigate HMS Tay. Corvettes HMS Sunflower, Snowflake, Loosestrife, and Pink. 2 rescue trawlers, HMS Northern Gem and Northern Spray. Fleet oiler British Lady for refueling at sea. The convoy headed west into deteriorating weather. By April 28th, ONS-5 was sailing directly into one of the worst Atlantic storms of 1943. Winds increased to Force 8, Force 9, Force 10, full gale conditions, mountainous seas. Convoy speed dropped from 7 knots to 5 knots to 3 knots. At times, the ships made less than 2 knots against the storm. The formation scattered. Ships separated by 10, 15, 20 miles. Escorts worked frantically, attempting to keep the convoy together and round up stragglers. The storm prevented U-boat attacks, but also prevented refueling. Duncan's fuel tanks dropped steadily lower. Gretton attempted to refuel from British Lady, but seas were too rough. The fuel line kept breaking. On May 2nd, Duncan was down to 8% fuel capacity. May 3rd, 6%. Gretton faced an impossible choice: remain with the convoy and run completely dry, becoming a drifting hulk, or detach immediately and make for the nearest port at economical speed. At 0800 hours on May 3rd, Gretton signalled Lieutenant Commander Robert Sherwood on HMS Tay to assume command of Escort Group B-7. Gretton detached Duncan and set course for St. John's, Newfoundland. 8 knots to conserve every drop of fuel. He arrived 50 hours later with only 4% fuel remaining in the bunkers, hours from running completely dry at sea. Command of the escort passed to Sherwood. Immediately upon assuming command, the ASDIC sonar system on Tay suffered a catastrophic equipment failure and went completely offline. The senior escort ship, the tactical commander, had no underwater detection capability whatsoever. Sherwood would fight the entire battle using only radar and visual detection. Admiral Dönitz had positioned 58 U-boats across the North Atlantic in 3 major patrol groups. Group Spect, with 17 boats, deployed south of Greenland at the western edge of the air gap. Group Miser, with 30 boats covering the central North Atlantic. Group Amsel, with 11 boats positioned southeast of Cape Farewell. These 3 groups represented the largest concentration of U-boats ever positioned against Allied convoy routes. Over 50 submarines deployed specifically to intercept and destroy the westbound slow convoys that had to pass through this killing zone. On April 28th, U-650 sighted ONS-5 and transmitted a position report. Within hours, multiple U-boats from Group Star, formed from elements of Miser, began converging on the convoy. By nightfall, April 28th, over 30 submarines had made contact, the largest Wolfpack attack of the war. The U-boat struck on the night of April 28th to 29th, but Gretton had mounted aggressive defense based on intercepted radio traffic. Escorts detected approaching submarines and drove them down. U-386 and U-532 were depth-charged and damaged so badly they had to abort their patrols and return to base. On April 29th at noon, U-258 torpedoed and sank the American freighter McKeesport, 6,198 tons. The first loss. The U-boat was damaged by depth charge attacks and forced to return to base. The storm continued through May 1st and 2nd. Convoy speed dropped below 3 knots, ships scattered across 30 miles of ocean, but the weather also prevented effective U-boat attacks. On May 3rd and 4th, the weather moderated to force 6, convoy reformed, speed increased to 6 knots. The U-boats attacked with renewed intensity. 5 ships were torpedoed and sunk on the night of May 4th to 5th, another 4 on May 5th. 9 merchant ships lost in 36 hours, 30,000 tons of shipping. It appeared to be developing into another massacre. But reinforcements were coming. The third support group had attempted to join, but most ships had to withdraw due to fuel shortage in the continuing heavy weather. Only destroyers HMS Offa and HMS Oribe remained. The first support group sailed from Newfoundland at noon on May 4th. Sloop HMS Pelican, commanded by Captain G. Brewer, sloop HMS Senon, frigates HMS Ware, Jed, and Spey. 5 additional warships racing to join the battle. On May 4th, a Royal Canadian Air Force Catalina flying boat from Squadron 5 sank 1 U-boat attacking the convoy. The aircraft presence forced other submarines to remain submerged, disrupting their coordination. Then on the night of May 5th to 6th, everything converged. The escorts now had HFDF on multiple ships. They detected every U-boat transmission. They had improved centimetric radar. They had aggressive commanders trained in offensive tactics. The first support group arrived with fresh ships and full fuel tanks. At approximately 2200 hours on May 5th, the Admiralty sent a signal to the convoy based on decoded German communications. 25 U-boats in direct contact. 40 more in the immediate vicinity and closing. 70 in the general area. The largest concentration of submarines ever focused on a single convoy. German records later confirmed 51 U-boats had been deployed against ONS-5. Dönitz had called for an all-out effort to annihilate the convoy. U-boat commanders believed they could wipe out every merchant ship that night. But the weather shifted in the Allies' favour. The wind dropped, the seas calmed, dense fog rolled in, near calm conditions with thick fog, perfect for radar and HFDF, terrible for visual submarine attacks. The killing began at 00:30 hours on May 6th. Corvette Loosestrife detected a radar contact at 5,200 yards range. The contact was closing the convoy on the surface at high speed. Loosestrife increased speed and turned to intercept. At 500 yards, the U-boat detected the corvette, turned away, and fired 2 torpedoes from stern tubes while beginning a crash dive. The torpedoes missed Loosestrife by narrow margins. The corvette overran the diving position and released a pattern of 10 depth charges, set to shallow depths. Massive underwater explosions, oil, debris, and air bubbles erupted to the surface. U-192 destroyed. No survivors. At 02:52 hours, destroyer Oribe was investigating an ASDIC contact at high speed when it collided at close range with surfaced U-125. Both vessels suffered damage. The submarine took heavy damage to the conning tower structure. Oribe lost ASDIC contact after the collision. At 03:54 hours, Corvette Snowflake detected a radar contact at extremely close range, 100 yards. The ship illuminated the target with searchlight. U-125 on the surface with massive visible damage to the conning tower. The crew was attempting to scuttle. Demolition charges detonated. The crew abandoned ship into the frigid Atlantic. Snowflake closed and picked up 35 survivors. At 0400 hours, destroyer Vidette gained a solid ASDIC contact and fired a full pattern from the Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. The forward-throwing weapon launched 24 small contact-fused bombs in an oval pattern ahead of the ship. Multiple explosions, direct hits on U-125, already critically damaged. The submarine went down immediately. No additional survivors beyond those already picked up. At 0430 hours, sloop Pelican from the first support group detected a surfaced U-boat and attacked with depth charges and gunfire. U-439 destroyed, 48 crew dead. At 0500 hours, destroyer Oribe detected another surfaced U-boat at close range. The commanding officer made the immediate decision to ram. Oribe struck U-531 at high speed, buckling the submarine's pressure hull. The U-boat sank within minutes. 54 crew died. At 0520 hours, Corvette Sunflower gained ASDIC contact and delivered a perfectly aimed depth charge pattern. U-638 destroyed, 44 dead. 6 U-boats destroyed in less than 6 hours of intense combat, the most successful night of anti-submarine warfare in the entire war to that point. The escorts had transformed from defenders to hunters. The 3 technologies deployed over the previous months gave them the ability to detect, track, and kill U-boats faster than the submarines could organize and execute attacks. When dawn broke on May 6th, the surviving U-boats began withdrawing. The escort victories had broken the will of the attacking force. The battle for convoy ONS-5 ended. Final statistics: 13 merchant ships sunk, approximately 63,000 tons, 6 U-boats confirmed destroyed, 7 more damaged so severely they aborted patrols and returned to base. Several of the damaged boats never returned to operational status. For the first time in the Atlantic War, a major convoy battle had resulted in the attacking submarine force taking heavier losses than they inflicted. The exchange ratio had reversed. But Admiral Dönitz did not yet fully understand what had happened. He ordered continued attacks. 2 weeks later, Convoy SC-130 proved definitively that May 1943 represented fundamental change. SC-130 departed Halifax on May 11th with 37 merchant ships, slow convoy, maximum speed 8 knots. Peter Gretton was back in command of Escort Group B7 after refueling Duncan, the same group of ships that had just fought through ONS-5. Admiral Dönitz positioned over 30 U-boats from Group Donau to intercept. Orders were to attack at all costs, sink maximum tonnage. The convoy was detected by U-304 on the evening of May 18th. The submarine transmitted a sighting report. Other boats began converging. Escort Group B7 mounted immediate aggressive defense. Every HFDF contact resulted in a destroyer or frigate detaching to run down the bearing at high speed. Every radar contact was investigated immediately. The escorts did not wait for submarines to attack. They hunted proactively. Through the night of May 18th to 19th, not a single U-boat successfully attacked the convoy. Every submarine that attempted to close was detected and forced to dive. Coordination was disrupted. Communication became dangerous. On May 19th, long-range aircraft joined the action. Very long-range Liberators from No. 120 Squadron RAF, Hudsons from No. 269 Squadron. The aircraft patrolled 50 to 100 miles ahead of the convoy, searching for U-boats attempting to reach attack positions. Aircraft destroyed U-273 with depth charges. Later that same day, the first support group arrived. Sloop HMS Sennen, frigates HMS Ware, Jed and Spey. 4 additional warships with full fuel and ammunition. Within hours, Sennen and Jed detected a submerged contact using ASDIC sonar, range approximately 800 yards. They attacked with Hedgehog mortars, multiple explosions, direct hits. U-954 destroyed. All 48 crew killed. Among the dead was Lieutenant Zur C. Peter Dönitz. Admiral Karl Dönitz's youngest son, 21 years old, served as watch officer. He died with his entire crew. The battle continued for several more days as the convoy crossed the Atlantic. On May 20th, destroyer Duncan and frigate Jed detected and destroyed U-381 with depth charges. On May 22nd, corvette Sunflower damaged U-304 so badly it had to abort its patrol. Final statistics for convoy SC-130: 0 merchant ships sunk. Not one. 37 ships crossed the Atlantic without a single loss. 5 U-boats destroyed. 3 more damaged. A perfect defensive victory. The kill ratio was infinite. When the battle reports reached U-boat headquarters, the shock was profound. 2 major convoy battles in 3 weeks. ONS-5 had cost 6 U-boats for 13 merchants. Tactically a defeat, but strategically concerning. SC-130 cost 5 U-boats for 0 merchants. Tactically catastrophic, strategically devastating. And the losses were mounting across the entire theatre. In the first 3 weeks of May, 33 U-boats had been destroyed, 18 lost in convoy battles in the Atlantic, 14 lost to air patrols over the Bay of Biscay and transit routes, 1 to accident. By May 24th, the total reached 41 U-boats lost. Some sources report 43, including boats lost to non-combat causes. 41 out of 240 operational submarines. 25% of the entire operational force destroyed in 30 days. The losses were unprecedented. In March, 12 U-boats had been sunk. April saw 15 lost. May's casualties were nearly 3 times the worst previous month. More U-boats lost in May 1943 than in all of 1941. The exchange ratio told the complete story of the reversal. In March, U-boats had sunk 82 merchant ships in the Atlantic, for 12 submarines lost, nearly 7 merchants per U-boat. 7-1 in Germany's favour. In May, 34 merchants were sunk in the Atlantic for 41 U-boats destroyed. The ratio had completely reversed. More than 1 U-boat lost for each merchant sunk. German shipyards were producing 20 new U-boats per month. Losing 41 in 1 month meant losses exceeded production by more than 2-1. The force was not merely sustaining casualties, it was shrinking. Experienced crews were dying faster than replacement crews could complete training. Young officers who should have become future commanders were dead at the bottom of the Atlantic. On May 24, 1943, Admiral Karl Dönitz sent an encrypted radio message to all U-boats operating in the North Atlantic convoy lanes. Withdraw from convoy routes. Return to base, effective immediately. For the first time since September 1939, no German U-boats actively hunted Allied convoys in the main North Atlantic shipping lanes. Dönitz later wrote in his memoirs that he knew in that moment they had lost the Battle of the Atlantic. The technologies had shifted the strategic balance irrevocably. His submarines were being hunted by weapons they could not detect, tracked by systems they did not know existed, killed by tactics they could not effectively counter. The personal loss compounded the strategic disaster. Peter Dönitz, dead aboard U-954 on May 19th. Hitler's standing policy allowed senior officers who lost a son in combat to withdraw other sons from frontline service. Dönitz's older son, Klaus, was given permission to leave submarine service and begin training as a naval doctor. But Klaus Dönitz convinced his comrades to allow him to participate in one more combat mission. On May 13, 1944, his 24th birthday, Klaus went out aboard fast attack boat S-141 for a raid on Selsey on the English coast. The boat was intercepted by French destroyer Le Combattant, operating with Allied forces. S-141 was sunk. Klaus Dönitz was killed. Both of the admiral's sons were dead. The U-boats attempted to return to the North Atlantic in autumn 1943. Admiral Dönitz equipped them with every possible improvement: better anti-aircraft armament with quadruple 20mm guns, acoustic homing torpedoes designated T5 Zonkönig designed to home on propeller noise, new radar detectors designated Wannsee designed to detect centimetric radar, various radar decoys. Nothing worked effectively. The first major operation after the return was against convoys ONS-18 and ON-202 in September 1943. 20 U-boats attacked. They sank 8 merchant ships and 6 escort warships. But they lost 9 U-boats. The exchange rate still decisively favoured the Allies. Losing 9 submarines to sink 14 ships was unsustainable. Subsequent operations produced even worse results. By the end of 1943, attacking Allied convoys in the North Atlantic had become nearly suicidal. Escort carriers provided continuous air coverage. Hunter-killer groups used HF, and centimetric radar to track submarines hundreds of miles from convoys. Very long-range aircraft closed the air gap. The escorts owned the ocean. The statistics from May 1943 onward tell the story of a force in terminal decline. September 1939 to April 1943. 44 months of war. German U-boats sank approximately 2,400 Allied merchant ships, an average of 55 ships per month. May 1943 to May 1945. 24 months remaining in the war. U-boats sank fewer than 400 additional ships, an average of 17 ships per month. Less than 1/3 the previous rate. The human cost was staggering beyond comprehension. Approximately 40,000 men served in German U-boats during World War II. 30,000 died in action. 75% casualty rate. The highest of any branch, of any military service, of any nation in the entire war. Most of those deaths occurred after May 1943. Young men killed by technologies their commanders did not fully understand and could not effectively counter. Commander Peter Gretton survived the war. He continued commanding Escort Group B 7 through 1944 until the group disbanded in summer for Operation Neptune, the naval component of the Normandy invasion. He was promoted to captain in 1948. He served in various positions, including naval assistant to the First Sea Lord and chief of staff to the senior British naval officer at the Joint Services Mission in Washington. He rose to Vice-Admiral and became 5th Sea Lord responsible for aviation. He retired from the Royal Navy in 1963. After retirement, Gretton became domestic bursar at University College, Oxford, and later senior research fellow. He wrote extensively about his wartime experiences. His memoir, Convoy Escort Commander, published in 1964, became a definitive account of the Battle of the Atlantic from the perspective of a convoy commander. Throughout his writings, Gretton consistently emphasized that technology alone was insufficient. It required well-trained crews, aggressive leadership, and tactics that fully exploited the new capabilities. The equipment gave escorts the tools to detect and track submarines. Training and leadership gave them the confidence and skill to hunt and kill. Commander Donald McIntyre continued hunting U-boats until late 1944. He personally sank 7 U-boats during the war and participated in the destruction of 8 others. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Order with 2 bars, one of the most decorated anti-submarine warfare officers of the war. After the war, McIntyre wrote extensively on naval history and anti-submarine tactics. His memoir, U-Boat Killer, published in 1956, became another classic account of the Atlantic campaign. He consistently argued that HFDF was the single most critical technology that fundamentally changed the battle. For the first time, escorts could detect and locate U-boats before the submarines detected the convoys. That initiative proved decisive. McIntyre retired from the Royal Navy with the rank of captain in 1955. He lived in Kent, England, and continued writing naval history until his death in 1981, at age 77. The scientists and engineers who developed the 3 key technologies received minimal public recognition during or immediately after the war. Security classifications kept their work secret for years. John Randall and Harry Boot developed the cavity magnetron at the University of Birmingham in February 1940. Their breakthrough made practical centimetric radar possible. The work remained classified top secret throughout the war and into the early 1950s. Neither scientist became widely known to the public. Both remained in academic research after the war. Randall died in 1984. Boot died in 1983. Their names are largely forgotten except by historians of radar development. The HFDF systems deployed on escort vessels were developed by dozens of engineering teams across Britain, the United States, and Canada. The critical achievement was miniaturizing direction, finding equipment to fit on small ships while maintaining accuracy and reliability in severe Atlantic weather conditions. The work was done by anonymous engineers at naval research facilities and equipment manufacturers. No individual ever received public credit for the system. The technology remained classified until well after the war ended. Squadron leader Humphrey de Verdley developed the ley light concept in 1940 while serving with Coastal Command. He pushed relentlessly for its adoption despite resistance from some Air Ministry officials who favoured competing searchlight designs. The ley light was not deployed operationally until mid-1942 due to production delays and bureaucratic obstacles. Lee received minimal official recognition for his innovation. He continued serving in the Royal Air Force after the war but never achieved high rank. He died in 1980, largely forgotten except by a few naval historians who understood the importance of his contribution. These 3 technologies did not win the Battle of the Atlantic alone. Victory required multiple contributing factors working in combination. Allied code-breaking operations broke the German naval Enigma cipher machine and allowed intelligence services to read U-boat communications. This permitted convoys to be routed around known patrol lines when possible. Very long-range B-24 Liberator bombers finally closed the mid-Atlantic air gap that had been the U-boat's safest hunting ground. Escort carriers provided continuous air cover, even in mid-ocean, far from land bases. Improved weapons like the Hedgehog forward-throwing mortar increased kill probability. American shipyards produced merchant ships faster than U-boats could sink them. But May 1943 was the month when the technology gap became unbridgeable. When the Allies deployed systems the Germans could not detect, could not counter, and could not match within any reasonable time frame. 41 U-boats destroyed in 30 days, approximately 1,800 German sailors dead in a single month. The turning point came not from one dramatic battle, or one brilliant commander, or one heroic action. It came from engineers who built radar that operated at wavelengths submarines could not detect, from scientists who developed direction finders that precisely tracked invisible radio signals, from technicians who installed powerful searchlights that turned night into deadly illuminated day. And it came from escort commanders like Peter Gretton and Donald McIntyre who used those tools with maximum aggression, who trained their crews to hunt instead of merely defend, who understood that new technologies required new tactics to achieve their full potential, who took risks and made decisions in the chaos of battle. The U-boat memorial at Multenort near Kiel in Germany lists the names of approximately 30,000 German submariners who died during World War II. 30% of those names are from 1943. The majority of those from May through December. Month after month of heavy losses that never stopped accelerating. At the Western Approaches Command Museum in Liverpool, England, historical displays show the merchant shipping loss statistics for the Battle of the Atlantic. The graphs tell the story with stark clarity. Allied losses peak dramatically in March 1943 at 476,000 tons sunk in the Atlantic. Then the line plunges in May to 134,000 tons, a drop of more than 70% in 2 months. The change is so sudden and so dramatic it appears to be a statistical error or a gap in the data. But it is neither. It is simply what happens when technology shifts a strategic balance in a matter of weeks. That is how wars are actually won, not solely through courage or determination or sacrifice, though all those qualities remain essential, but through scientists who identify problems and engineer solutions, through technicians who build equipment that functions reliably under operational conditions, through commanders who employ new tools with tactical sophistication, through crews who train relentlessly and fight with skill, through radar operators who spent 18 months achieving minimal results before finally receiving equipment that actually worked, through destroyer captains who ran down radio bearings at 27 knots through heavy seas, through aircraft crews who flew through darkness over hostile ocean and activated searchlights at precisely the right moment, and through 41 U-boat crews who died in May 1943, killed by weapons they never saw approaching, tracked by signals they had no ability to detect, hunted by enemies who finally owned both day and night. The broader strategic implications of Black May extended far beyond immediate tactical victories. Before May 1943, Allied victory in Europe remained genuinely uncertain. Britain's survival depended entirely on Atlantic convoys. The March loss rates, if sustained, would have made Operation Overlord impossible. There would not have been sufficient shipping capacity to transport and supply a massive invasion force across the English Channel. May 1943 permanently ended that threat. After Black May, the Allies transported 3 million American and Allied servicemen across the Atlantic to Britain with negligible losses. Operation Overlord proceeded on schedule in June 1944 with adequate shipping. The supplies necessary to sustain multiple armies in Europe flowed continuously across secure sea lanes. The psychological impact on both sides proved equally significant. For German U-boat crews, May 1943 shattered 3 years of operational confidence. They had hunted Allied shipping with relative impunity since 1939. Their commanders had assured them they were winning. Suddenly they became the hunted. Every surfacing risked instant death. Every transmission potentially revealed their position. The vast ocean that had protected them became their grave. Morale in the U-boat service collapsed catastrophically. Veterans who survived early patrols requested transfers to any other duty. New commanders finishing training reported to operational boats, knowing statistical probability indicated they would not survive their first patrol. The casualty numbers supported that grim assessment. 3 out of 4 U-boat men died before the war ended, serving on submarines transformed from elite service to death sentence. For Allied merchant seamen and naval crews, Black May represented vindication and renewed hope. For 3 years they had sailed, knowing the statistical odds favoured their death. Ships went down on nearly every convoy crossing. Men died in freezing Atlantic waters. After May 1943, the psychological burden lifted measurably. Convoys arrived with minimal or zero losses. The escorts actually protected them effectively. The technologies worked. For the first time since September 1939, merchant sailors could cross the Atlantic with reasonable confidence they would survive to sea port. The technological lessons learned from Black May influenced naval warfare development for decades afterward. The decisive effectiveness of centimetric radar led to massive continued investment in microwave radar systems. These systems remain fundamental to naval operations today. Modern warships carry multiple radar systems operating at various wavelengths, all descendants of the cavity magnetron breakthrough at Birmingham. The concept of using radio direction finding to track enemy forces evolved directly into modern electronic warfare and signals intelligence. Every naval force now operates sophisticated systems to detect, analyze, and locate enemy transmissions. The HFDF principle, pioneered in the Atlantic, has expanded into comprehensive electronic intelligence gathering that shapes modern naval tactics. The critical importance of coordinated air and sea operations demonstrated by May 1943, convoy battles became fundamental doctrine. Modern naval task forces always include integral air cover. Aircraft carriers remain central to naval power projection, specifically because of lessons from the Atlantic. The hunter-killer concept, pioneered by support groups and escort carriers, evolved into modern anti-submarine warfare groups that combine surface ships, helicopters, and maritime patrol aircraft. May 1943 definitively proved that technological superiority could decisively compensate for numerical disadvantage. At the peak of Black May, Germany operated 240 U-boats, the largest submarine fleet ever assembled. The Allies had fewer escort vessels than they needed. Many convoys sailed with minimal protection. But superior detection technology and effective weapons allowed the numerically smaller Allied force to achieve complete victory. This lesson fundamentally shaped Cold War naval strategy. NATO focused extensive resources on technological superiority in sensors, weapons, and communications systems to offset Soviet numerical advantages in submarines and surface ships. The investment prioritized technology quality over platform quantity. This approach traced directly to Black May experience. The German response to their May 1943 defeat also provides important lessons. Admiral Dönitz attempted to counter Allied technological advantages through incremental improvements: acoustic homing torpedoes, better radar warning receivers, enhanced anti-aircraft armament, schnorkel breathing tubes for submerged diesel operation. None of these innovations proved sufficient. These incremental improvements provided marginal capability gains but never regained the initiative. Once the Allies achieved decisive technological superiority across multiple domains simultaneously, the Germans could not catch up within available time. Gradual improvements were fundamentally insufficient against comprehensive technological dominance. This dynamic appears repeatedly throughout military history. The force that achieves decisive technological advantage across multiple critical capabilities simultaneously often wins regardless of courage or numbers. Black May demonstrated this principle with exceptional clarity. 3 technologies deployed together: centimetric radar, HFDF, lay light, each individually valuable. Combined simultaneously, they proved unstoppable. For the individuals who experienced May 1943, the month represented either deliverance or disaster, depending entirely on which uniform they wore. For Peter Gretton, standing watch in St. John's with empty fuel tanks while his convoy fought for survival, the situation had appeared desperate. Within 2 weeks, he commanded what became recognized as the most significant defensive victory of the Atlantic War. His aggressive employment of new technologies established the tactical model all future convoy operations would follow. For Donald McIntyre aboard Hesperus, HFDF equipment fundamentally transformed his ability to protect convoys. Instead of merely reacting to torpedo attacks, he could hunt submarines proactively 50 miles from the convoy. His success rate increased dramatically. By war's end, he ranked among the Royal Navy's most successful U-boat hunters still in active service. For the officers and crews of RAF Coastal Command Squadrons, ASV Mark III radar ended 18 months of operational frustration. Their lay lights finally functioned as originally intended. They achieved U-boat kill rates that would have been completely impossible with previous equipment. They helped close the Bay of Biscay transit routes, U-boats absolutely required to reach the Atlantic hunting grounds. For German U-boat commanders and crews, May 1943 became the month everything went catastrophically wrong simultaneously. Experienced captains who had survived 2 or 3 years of combat operations died in sudden, unexpected attacks. New boats on first war patrols sank before achieving anything significant. The ocean that had been a vast protective environment became a killing ground where Allied technology located and destroyed submarines with merciless efficiency. May 1943 stands as one of the clearest examples in all military history of technology decisively shifting strategic balance in a matter of weeks. 3 innovations deployed simultaneously: centimetric radar, high-frequency direction finding, ley light searchlights, none individually revolutionary. Combined together, they reversed the outcome of the longest continuous campaign of World War II. 41 U-boats destroyed in 30 days, approximately 1,800 German sailors killed, 134,000 tons of Allied shipping lost compared to 476,000 tons lost in March. An exchange ratio that shifted from 7 to 1 in Germany's favour to more than 1 to 1 favouring the Allies. Numbers that represented not merely tactical victories but fundamental strategic transformation that permanently altered the war's trajectory. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these histories. Each one matters. Each one deserves to be remembered. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. Our community spans the globe. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping these stories alive.